Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our 12th and last Let's Talk About webinar of the year. I'm Siwan Smith, Diversity and Inclusion Manager and Women in Innovation Programme Lead at KTN. And it's my honour to introduce our host for today's webinar, Sally Poinsett-Nash. Sally is founder of Brandable & Co., an award-winning agency specialising in personal, career and leadership brand strategy and development, and is one of the UK's leading people brand experts and on a mission to make business more human. Sally has more than 20 years experience navigating the world of high-level business and brand building and has held CEO and COO positions, headed up international projects and delivered brand strategy and advisory board roles to high-profile clients, including Boston Consulting Group and Kindred. Sally has been named as top 12 women to watch in 2020, as well as in Sifted 2020's top 10 must-follow influencers in Europe. And Sally and Brandable & Co. have been featured in publications including The Telegraph, Daily Mail, BBC, Glamour magazine, and Good Housekeeping, to name but a few. And a fun fact, standing taller than 99.98% of the population, Sally is also the creator of #TeamTall, an online group that has been inspiring and supporting a global community of over 6,500 tall women since 2016. So personally, I'm extremely glad that this was an online event today, as at 5'4" myself, I only need to look up to Sally as an incredible inspirational role model and not physically look up to her. So alongside our panelists, Sally will be sharing what they wish they'd known. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to chair the panel today. This kind of format plays to what I love. It's what I've built my business around, and it's about being seen, being heard, and most importantly, being human. I often use a shop analogy when deconstructing the pillars of brand building, and when we only put professional in our shop windows, we're doing ourselves a disservice, so we miss out on opportunities, connections, and growth. Accolades are impressive, success is inspiring, but our collection of life experiences, stories, and the lessons we've learned along the way is what differentiates us from every single one of the 7 billion plus people who live on the planet. And that's far more interesting than being professional or comparing yourself to others. Today's guests are all inspiring, they're knowledgeable, they're successful in their field of expertise, but they're also human beings. And they're living their lives navigating the hurdles like the rest of us. And when they show up, these valuable lessons, these stories that we'll be sharing today, hopefully you can take some gems and some value and apply them to wherever you are on your business, career, or life journey. You can find everyone on LinkedIn, so if something connects with you, why not connect with them and see where it takes you? So first up on my introductions list is Nicola Pilsmoser. Nicola is the co-founder of Happier Health, a digital pain management tool for young people. Nicola is dialing in today from Berlin, and she's originally from Austria. When we can travel, she loves to travel back there to enjoy the wonderful nature and also the vibrancy of Vienna. Based on her own experiences with chronic pain since childhood, Nicola transforms access to personalized and playful pain coping support. And her top priority is the involvement of patients in designing healthcare innovation. From her background in entrepreneurship at the University of Cambridge, healthcare and design at Imperial, as well as her experiences at Happier Health, she's developed a strong skill set in understanding patient needs. With a diverse team from the fields of psychology, pain management, software, art, and design, Nicola is creating novel patient experiences for resilient future generations. At the beginning of the pandemic, Nicola started a 10-minute morning yoga routine, and a little over 18 months later, can't imagine how she lived without it. She also loves cooking and baking, and especially trying new vegan recipes. So thank you for being here with us today, Nicola. I'm sure the audience are as excited as I am to hear about some of your experiences. as well as the vegan recipes. So next up, we have Dr. Kate Cameron. Kate is the founder and CEO of Cytochroma, a biotechnology company that manufactures ethical stem cell derived models and offers lab-based testing for the pharmaceutical industry. The company's mission is to accelerate global drug discovery and eliminate the need for animal testing by identifying the reaction of new drugs in ethically diverse stem cell models ahead of clinical trials. Now, I'm sure many of you can relate when I say that Kate loved to travel pre-pandemic and can't wait to get back on a plane and set out on her next new adventure. Kate's joining us today from Edinburgh, and for now travel is limited to the car on her daily commute, where she's discovered that singing loudly to music is a great way to relieve stress. Kate has a PhD from Edinburgh University and over 15 years scientific experience. She's led several research projects, presented at multiple conferences and lectured internationally. Kate is also a former BBSRC-sponsored Royal Society of Edinburgh Enterprise Fellow. She is a driven entrepreneur who has achieved significant recognition in numerous business awards, grants, and competitions. Now, a girl's got to eat, right? Kate is a self-confessed, dedicated foodie who loves to visit new restaurants, cafes, and bars with her husband. She also enjoys going to the gym to work off some of that love of food, but also to boost mental health and help deal with stress. And talking of stress relief, spending time with our pets, it's a brilliant way to relieve stress and also to access play. And Kate is grateful to have 2 adopted, super fluffy ragdoll cats who love to cuddle and who fit that stress relieving brief. So we're delighted to have you here today, Kate. Thank you. And our final guest in today's inspiring lineup is Deborah Coughlin. Deborah is the founder of Method X Studios, who are democratizing good mental health through prescription entertainment. She's the author of Outspoken, which is a Penguin title showcasing 50 incredible women thought leaders from history. Deborah's an award-winning creative innovator and entrepreneur. She's a creator of stories, of products, communities, and businesses, all designed to empower and disrupt the way that we look at things. Deborah is coming to us today from her trial office in London, which is a bit of a shock to the system as we emerge from lockdown working. She moved to Wales in lockdown with her 2 dogs, Oddball, the Boston Terrier, and Henry, the Cocker Spaniel, who are an odd coupling, a bit like the burglars in Home Alone, and they're always getting themselves into all kinds of scrapes. In lockdown, Deborah started training as a psychotherapist and is about to go into year 2 of a 4-year course. It's something that she's really excited about, but it's emotionally exhausting. And although I'm sure she'll find a way, like we always do when it's something we're passionate about, she's currently got no idea how she's going to fit that in with the return to work. Deborah recently celebrated being named the winner of the Innovate Women in Innovation Award. She's an AMR fellow, and alongside that, being a writer, a speaker, and presenting for The Guardian and on BBC Radio. Those people in those places only have good things to say about Deborah, about her combination of creativity, practicality, and her innovative entrepreneurial approach. And like many of us, especially us introverts, Deborah is still not sure if she's happy that everything is opening up again. And it's proving challenging to find the balance. She's loved the lack of FOMO, the less social obligations than we had previously, but she's also missed a lot of things too. So she's hoping to hold on to some of the space that lockdown gave her and get back to some of the things that she's been missing. So thank you for making time to join us today, Deborah. There is so much value to be found in the stories we tell and the lessons we learn along the way. So now that you know a bit more about today's inspiring and accomplished guests, let's talk about what they wish they had known. in the final of this what I wish I had known series. So opening this up to be more of a free-flowing conversation. I think working in your business more than you work on your business can be counterproductive, and kind of carving out time to reflect and pause and look at what's been going on around us can be incredibly valuable. So looking back, what are the key things that you wish you had known when starting out in your careers or on your business journey? Kate, I'm going to go with you for a starter.
Well, it's been quite a journey, to use a very common phrase. I think one thing that I found particularly so is that it's been a lot of highs and lows. I thought a PhD was tough, but that's nothing compared to running your own company. It's physically and mentally exhausting, very hard to switch off at the end of the day. But when you meet new people, win prizes or awards, it's quite exhilarating, getting grants in, seeing that money arrive in the bank accounts, an amazing feeling, especially when you're the one behind it. And all the people that are there to support you along the way. I think that's something that's constantly surprised me, is all the people that are willing to help. There's a fantastic network up here in Scotland, and when we're allowed to go and network again, I really look forward to going out and meeting people face to face again. So
yeah, the people around us and the community, business community we build, it's something I thought you had to do it alone at the beginning. So yeah, knowing that value later, it's valuable, but had I known that at the beginning, I probably would have built a business sooner. So thank you for sharing. Deborah, what do you look back and think, I wish I'd have known that when I was starting?
I think there's two things. So I think the main difference between my experience running a business now as opposed to previous businesses and projects that I've launched is that this time I'm really not trying to manage up. And in the case of an entrepreneur, managing up is like almost everything external facing. I joined an incubator called Zinc, which is a tech for good incubator. And I just decided when I would join that I would ask for help when I needed it and actually say how things really were, as opposed to saying everything's all right all the time and trying to muddle through on your own. And the other thing that I think I've learned really only in the past 6 months is not to try and do everything myself, and to really find people who enjoy doing spreadsheets when I don't enjoy doing spreadsheets and Gantt charts, and find people who love the things that I don't love doing, so that it is not a chore, so that it is more closer to being a pleasure. That's what I've found is really helpful in terms of keeping my energy high.
Yeah, really good share there. Have you found it easier with working from home and finding people to delegate the work to, I guess, areas where people love doing this work? Is it easier with a work from home model, or?
I think that I want to give a proper answer, but it is a kind of like pros and cons situation. So I've found it, I initially found it harder to hire online. So last summer when I was hiring for a lot of roles, I found it very difficult to get a read off people. Hopefully I've got a bit better at that now. But last summer, I think that I made a few misses in terms of really getting across our company culture, what we're like, and really getting people on board with the mission. I think I've got a bit better at that now. But it does allow for having people working all around the country, all around the world, even on your project, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think that kind of the same, where there are pros and cons to everything, aren't there? And it's the same with this new model for working. Nicola, what about you? What do you wish you'd known?
I think, putting it simple, I would say put users first, always. And I kind of knew that you have to talk to users, you have to work with users to build successful products, but nobody really tells you how to work with them, and many of them successfully. And nobody tells you that. So everybody says work with users, but like how? I mean, there's so many different ways, so many different experiments you can do, things and different ways you can ask people what they think about your product, because asking them, do you like it, is not the best question to ask or to get a proper answer that helps you. And I think on the user, it's often tricky to find the users that you need kind of to test and to validate things. And you have to ask your question, is it because there is no need, or is it because there is just a barrier to get to them? And for us, we definitely saw, okay, there is a barrier. So there is in chronic pain management, or in chronic pain, there's a huge stigma where people don't talk about having chronic pain or having challenges in their day-to-day life. So definitely ask yourself this question. If we would have found, okay, there is no need, then we probably should have pivoted, but we found there is a huge need. And I believe same for Kate and Deborah, that they found this and overcame this barrier. So that's definitely something you always should focus on. Similar to what you said, Sally, make pain management human, make branding human. So I think that's something we can resonate with, because the patient has to be at the center.
Yeah, that's something I love about your offering. I think, asking great questions when you're setting up a business, whilst you're running a business, is key to the quality of answers you're going to receive. But so many people are like, I've got this great business idea. Well, did you ask anyone? Does the market want this? Do people want this in this way? I think the end user actually knows more about what's needed, because they're the person having that experience, especially in what you're specializing in.
Exactly. And I feel there is often a fear that people don't want to ask because they're afraid of failure, afraid that people give you negative feedback. And that's a long process to learn that negative feedback is the best feedback you can get, because it helps you to grow, to move forward. Yeah, that's a challenge. And that's something we all have to get resilient about. So yeah, think about that early on if you start a business.
Yeah, I think reframing any kind of negative feedback as, is a growth opportunity. You're able to adapt, be grateful for the fact that somebody told you and they didn't just tell everyone around them without feeding back to you. It can be ouch to hear it sometimes, but it's business. You've got to move past ouch and evolve what you're offering. And I think, when that comes to like, I'm bringing this through to awareness, because when you're not aware of something, you can't change it. And once you see something, once you hear something, once you learn it, you can't unsee it, unhear it, unlearn it. And the things that, were you aware of these things earlier in the career journey? Were you aware that there was, you were missing this, or have you learned as you've gone along? Did you prioritize something, other skill sets, knowledge, thinking I'll figure this stuff out later? Or was it simply the fact you weren't aware?
Is that, well, I mean, like for me, with the two things I mentioned, I think that in terms of not asking people for help and not being prepared to look vulnerable or like, I don't know what I'm doing, sometimes being scared of doing that, I think resulted in me not being offered a lot of help or not being offered the right help and support. And I think I always just felt, well, why are people not seeing what I actually need? Why are people not actually seeing it? And it was because I wasn't saying it. I wasn't actually saying it. I was trying to cover up and, make everything look as if I really knew what I was doing and I was perfect at what I was doing. And of course, not many people are. So that, that one. And then in terms of getting people on board who, complement your skill set instead of trying to do everything yourself, basically I would burn out on projects and they would become, exhausting and draining rather than energizing. And I think that, at the time, maybe thinking, oh, I'm saving on money, or I'm saving on, I should be good at all these things, that those kind of thoughts, that's what was kind of leading me down that road, but it was a false economy, really. Yeah,
interesting. What about you?
When I started, I was super naive. I didn't know anything about business or like I spent my entire time in the lab focused on experiments. So I thought, I mean, how hard can it be? I entered a couple of business plan competitions and I had my wee business plan written. I was going to sell to these customers and this is how much it was going to cost. And then I was like, oh, you have to deal with all these other things, like how do you go about hiring someone? What licenses? I didn't even know you needed licenses to sell stem cells, and who does your accounting, who does the taxes. I didn't pay PAYE for like 2 months because I didn't know I had to pay it. So nobody told me. Yeah, so I was just kind of doing what I was told for some of it. But then again, that kind of worked in my advantage in some ways, because I'd go into these big scary competitions that people had been in before, rounds and rounds of failure, and I just walked in and said, this is my business, this is what I'm going to do, and people believed me and then gave me some prize money, and I was like, okay, right, just go to the next competition and just do the same. So I think, yeah, being naive can sometimes be a good thing, and just being bold and going for it. But yeah, amazing, the stuff you don't know until you don't do it or whatever. Yeah. So
yeah, I had great advice years ago from one of my clients who said, I was put in a situation I really didn't know about the industry. I was thrown into it last minute. And they said to me, as long as you look like you know what you're doing, no one's going to question you. But the second you flail or you show a glimmer of, I really don't know what I'm doing here, everyone's going to question you. So I kind of like that naivety and boldness has worked well in your favor. I can see why. But I'm sure the learning curve has been
it's been very, very steep. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nicola?
I would say, as you mentioned, prioritizing is a huge challenge, because as both Kate and Deborah just mentioned, there's so many things, team members you have to hire, competitions you're applying to, grants you're applying to, talking to investors. There's so much expected what you do, also what is portrayed about building or running a business in our society, what you should do, kind of be on LinkedIn, put blogs up, do education, do talks, do whatever. I mean, there's so many things you should do, but your day still has just a certain number of hours. So I think from my side, what I learned over time is that I really have to show others I'm working with that we are putting users first, that we are talking to users first, because others don't. They want a pitch deck, not the user, they want the pitch deck. They want, I don't know, they want spreadsheets. So there's so many things they demand of you. And when you're kind of starting, you feel small, you feel vulnerable. So you say, okay, the experts, they want to have that. So of course, that's what we should do. But just stand your point and say, no, users first. This has to wait. And of course, sometimes you have to prioritize for other things. But I believe that everything you do, be it grants, applications, whatever, you should do to free up time to better understand your users, to build a better product, to understand your users better, to build a better product. So always the cycle, and use everything with the idea in mind that you're freeing up time to be with your users and build a valuable product for them.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of that, why are you in business? It's like you're in business to serve an end user somewhere along the line. And it's making sure that, I suppose they stay front of mind within your organization. You see it with the, very early stage startups. It's there. And as organizations scale and grow, it gets less and less and less, and it becomes more about the culture and kind of the political side within the organization, and they lose touch with it. So I think it's really valuable knowledge to be sharing for any size company, whether you're running a business on your own right now, or whether you're running a business with tens of thousands of people in it. It's like, don't forget the reason you're in business in the first place. Life, I suppose, is a business. It's a roller coaster. Lucky for me, I love a roller coaster. but not having children, I prefer going to a theme park outside of a summer holiday. I think on this roller coaster, it becomes all about the business. There are times where it's all consuming. It takes over your life completely, whether it's before a pitch or a big shift in the business. How have you managed to be gracious with yourself through this process so far?
I'm incredibly hard on myself, and I know that people say, "Oh, you're doing well," or you look at your list of achievements and you think, "Wow, that's amazing," and then someone says, "No, thanks, we don't want to invest in you," and then you're just like, "Oh, why do I bother?" You take everything personally. It's quite difficult. And I recently got some feedback, and it was like 10 different people's feedback, and 8 of them were like, "Best pitch of the day, nailed it. Love her, she's fantastic." And there was one that was like, "Read too much from the script," and that's the only one that I will ever remember. There were so many other good ones, and I'm terrible for focusing on the bad. But then I do think that when people tell me no or put me down and say, like somebody actually said, "Oh, but who's helping you do this? So you can't possibly be doing this on your own." Then I'm like, "I'll show you." If you tell me no, I'm definitely going to do it. Yeah. So I think, I take those criticisms hard. So it's definitely a dip. But then if you can turn it into something positive or get you up 10 minutes earlier and you get more work done, then it's definitely going up the roller coaster again.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I'm less harsh on myself the older I get, but I think it's, how do you navigate that? I mean, Deborah and Nicola, have you managed to navigate that possibly better than Kate and I have or are?
It takes a lot of support for me to be able to navigate my way through all the many different emotions and challenges that happen through this. So, I have regular coaching. I've seen a therapist myself for years, and try out all kinds of different ways of developing, I suppose, a kinder inner voice, and more compassion for myself as well as for other people that I'm working with. But that is all much easier to say than to do in real life. So some days I'm incredibly impatient, annoyed with myself, annoyed with everybody else, wondering why the hell I'm doing this. There must be an easier way to get through life. I suppose I find different forms of support from going to the gym and my partner, to my dogs, to a therapist. So I try and have as many things around me as possible to support me.
I used to go to the pub almost after work, almost every day. That was my therapy, to go and rant to all my friends and all these the eclectic mix of local people. So when lockdown hit and then I couldn't go there, couldn't go to the gym, I was just like, and we were working through the whole time because our building's been open. So we didn't stop. We were busy working away in the lab the whole time. So it felt like there was no escape sometimes, which was quite hard. Yeah.
I would also touch on what Deborah said, that you have to have a lot of strategies because there's so many different situations and not every strategy would work for every situation. Sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're frustrated or sad or whatever. A lot of emotions will come up. And I must say, I learned a lot from what we're also providing for young people with chronic pain, or for anybody with chronic pain, because having your own business sometimes can be a bit of a chronic pain because there's always something that's not working. And then applying strategies like meditation, self-care, mindfulness, asking for help, asking different people for help, just also looking after your emotional well-being is so important. And yeah, definitely not easy. And probably the journey is as long as the business, and then far longer, probably until the end of our lives. But there's always improvement. And I think one thing that helps me, just one reminder, is to take a step back and take a different perspective. So if now, for example, on your feedback, Kate, if somebody outside of your kind of close cycle, or maybe a friend, your partner, would look at these 10 feedback cards or 10 feedback sheets, what would they see? Just show them, and they would probably pick a mix of positive and negative. And I'll try to kind of practice that with myself, taking the role of somebody else, looking at something from outside, which sometimes helps to reduce the criticism we have for ourselves. So that I found helped quite a lot.
And something I do with clients, so I typically start with a brand DNA process to kind of pick apart professional, personal, and then come up with a blend. But before we get started, always sending out a questionnaire to the person's network, and making it anonymous is great because people are really honest, and you're never going to get terrible feedback unless you might, maybe you do terrible things or you're a terrible person. But asking people, can you describe me in 3 to 5 words? Is there a way in which I've had a positive impact on you? And allowing this cross section of people in your network to answer. There's always dread from people, what are people going to say about me? And there's always surprise when it comes back in. So I think, we are our harshest critics. People are not sitting there watching this today thinking, you should have done this, you should have said that. People are thinking about themselves. What can I learn from this? What can I take away from this? Whereas, you can be super harsh on yourself. And I think my inner voice and the way that I've spoken to myself over the years, I wouldn't dream of speaking to somebody else like that. So I kind of almost had to reframe, would I say this to someone else? Because it is really harsh. And a bit like Deborah, I've got a therapist who intervenes in those things. And I was like, did you just hear what you said?
I think just to say that, I didn't even, so I've had therapy for a long time because I had big problems with my mental health in my 20s, and that was my way out of it finally. But I didn't even know professional coaches existed until I joined this incubator a couple of years ago. I'd never even knew that there were these people who had kind of trained to kind of coach people through in the same way Rocky gets coached, kind of like to coach you through, even just like maybe a hiring process, or maybe like an investment process, or, and it blew my mind. And I thought, this is just decadence. This is like middle-class people gone crazy. And but actually having tried it, and you can find people who are more affordable than others. The same with therapy. A lot of therapists do a sliding scale, depending on what you earn. I think there is that, I would recommend trying things. But yeah, like you as well, Kate, going to the pub was one of my favorite ways to let kind of like the pressure valve loose. And that hasn't been available in the same way for ages.
What about moving to Wales? Has that shifted and given you a bit more perspective? Because I've certainly found that, after work, being by an ocean in Cornwall, work doesn't seem that, whatever it was that was all consuming while I was at my desk, it just doesn't seem that important anymore. How's the shift been for you?
Definitely. So I think that in the past few months, I've definitely tried to think of myself as more than my business. When you're in the countryside, there's so many big things that are bigger than your business. Like, seeing the stars again, Sally. So like going outside and going, oh my God, I'm in a universe. That universe isn't so bothered about my schedule or my diary, or, whether I haven't got back to an email immediately, or, it definitely puts things in perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you can find that anywhere, you can find it in the city. It's just making the time for it.
Yeah.
And getting out and away from the desk periodically, really, throughout the day, to get some perspective on something that seems like a big drama, but it actually isn't at all.
Yeah.
I'm a strategist through and through. It's what I've done for my entire career, whatever I've been doing. And I am not a fan of busy. Busy to me is not a good thing. Productivity is great, but I still fall into this busy trap from time to time. How do you continue to learn and develop amongst, all of the things that are going on running a business? Probably should direct my questions, seeing as we're not in the same room and I'm probably not looking in the right direction, but Kate, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I like to push myself. I think if I read once, it was everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. So I continually push myself to be scared of something, and then you learn something incredible. I think that whether you can do it is like, you can do a pitch, you do a talk, you ask someone for something. You always get something in return, I think. Yeah. Or you learn something new. Yeah. And as a scientist, I just love learning facts and new things. So I'm still read my scientific papers and articles and skim through all what's happening with rockets and things, and keep my love for new and innovative things alive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Nicola, how about you?
I would say it's taking the time in conversations to enjoy the conversation and not just get kind of what you want to get out of the conversation. So we always have a goal. I don't know, I'll talk to one investor. I want to have the next meeting as my goal. And it's important to set these goals, but also there's so many things you can learn in between, things other people tell you. And I think that's what I enjoy about our network. We're in touch with so many different people from be it the medical field, but then also the technical field, the whole startup ecosystem in different countries. And yeah, I think the reminder is you're not alone. This is not happening in isolation, and you can learn from so many different things from a diverse pool of people from all over the world, especially as we're now all kind of zooming in from somewhere. And so there's so many perspectives you can take. And I think that's one point I really enjoyed about it, where, of course, we had international connections before, but I feel sometimes the barrier is a bit lower now as people from all over the world join a certain conversation.
Deborah?
I'm a big fan of joining things. So I joined that Incubator Zinc that helped me get my business going. And then I applied for a fellowship called A Million Realities, which is amazing. And that's 2 years. And I was blown away that I got on it. So I've got 7 peers on that. And then we get support through that as well, and continually trying to develop and learn. So making sure that I'm learning as I'm going and not just delivering constantly is definitely making me better at delivering. But also, just to come back to what Nicola was saying, I think that something I've learned only very recently is, the wider a bandwidth you can have, kind of like the more data that you collect and the more data that other people won't collect because they're so narrowly focused. So meandering long conversations can actually give you tons of really valuable stuff. Whereas if you're like, no, this is a 18-minute conversation and I'm not going to go over it. Boundaries are really important as well. So it's a whole balance. But the more space you can give yourself, your team, people you work with, and peers, I think the richer the information we get, and the more interesting the ideas that we can come up with.
Definitely. And I think, even meeting people with an open mind, you think back to kind of old school networking, you turn up and someone just walks up to you. What do you do? It's like, I'm Sally, nice to meet you. Doing great, thanks for asking. You meet people on a human level, maybe because you've got something in common with them, or you can build rapport around something. You just have no idea where those conversations are going to take you. And that's something I love. Even as an introvert, people are my passion, and those kind of one-on-one conversations for me, they work best, because you can really get into something with someone that you had no idea you could learn from each other.
I think the most exciting opportunities I've ever gained have been in a conversation with somebody I wasn't expecting to speak to about that subject. So yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
And we've got a question in from Sam Allen, who is watching this over on YouTube. If you could give your old self one piece of advice with a time turner in your hand, what would it be? If anyone has an immediate answer, jump in first. I think I would go ahead.
I would say, if you start a business, just put your laptop away, take a piece of paper and get out there and talk to the people you want to help.
Yeah, really good advice.
Mine would just be
to just go. Sam.
All right, yeah, mine would just be to just go for it. Like, the worst thing you can do is fail or it doesn't work. It's way better than regretting not doing something. So just do it. Yeah.
I think for me, it is be kinder to yourself and ask people for help. People are much more generous than you think they are, and they will come and help you and support you.
All really good pieces of advice. Mine would be, tapping into how something feels. I think my younger self was very focused on a goal and very career driven, and I didn't tap into things like, how does that actually feel? I wanted to be a CEO in a particular organization, which I ended up being, but I didn't think about what that experience might feel like. So for me, it would be to value and listen to my feelings, and also check in. Feelings and business don't necessarily get banded around together very often, but I think it's really important to check in with how you feel. Can you share examples of the learning from successes? I don't really see that there's failures, because there's always something to be learned from any kind of failure. But what examples would you say stand out, something that you'd like to share with people? What have you learned through the doing, I guess, the doing, experiencing? What's been your biggest learning?
I think one example, I'm not sure if it's kind of the biggest one, but one example was that we quite early on looked at solutions for so now we're kind of developing our mobile app, but we were looking at augmented reality and virtual reality solutions. And everyone found it innovative. They found it nice. They found it look fancy and shiny. And we got a lot of great feedback, except from users. So here again, this dilemma, kind of everybody tells you, and people would pour money into that like crazy. And the metric was very ambivalent. So we got good feedback, we got bad feedback. And I think that was the main learning, that the user metric always counts, because that's what matters in the end. So it was seemingly kind of successful, this direction we explored, and we had prototypes for that. And I guess that was the most important part. We tested it, and we didn't just assume it and build it. So really testing and then listening to the feedback, but not kind of letting the negative feedback be overshadowed by the positive feedback, even if the positive feedback seems a bit kind of a larger group of people, because you have to figure out who are the important people.
I think that could be transferred to any business or life, and meeting people as you go along. But I think, that's great. Thank you.
One of the things, you go.
Thanks, Kate. For me, so taking a kind of example from writing that I've had to apply in my current business is kill your darlings. So things that you think are bloody amazing and you just love it, and you think you're a genius for coming up with it, and the ability to be able to accept that you're wrong about something and it's not the right thing, and to be able to stop doing it. And also to be able to fess up to others that you tried something and it didn't quite work, but you've learned this and you're going to take the next step on from it. And the other thing from my cohort of startup founders that I've started with, SEIS is something that can really go wrong. So to really, if you're fundraising through SEIS, is to really concentrate on your dates and your amounts, and make sure that you really know what you're doing, because people run into it with open arms, and 18 months later or 12 months or whatever it is now, come a cropper. So in my experience, those are the two things.
And what about, I'm curious to know, because a book is an amazing marketing tool to have for anybody. It can allow you to open doors into places. What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned from that process and from a book and being published?
That you can't get Beyonce to be in your book. That's the first thing. You can get Michelle Obama, you can get Oprah, you can get amazing Hillary Clinton, but you can't get Beyonce, and accept that. I think a book is an amazing thing to have done. I'm really pleased that I've done it. I immediately want to write more things, but I've got to balance that with doing the business as well. Yeah, it's about balancing that. I have huge ambitions in that direction, but I'm kind of putting them on pause a little bit at the moment.
Okay, interesting.
One thing I've found was, well, I left academia because I didn't want to write grants all day, but it turns out I'm really good at writing grants, and I think last month was the first time I didn't get one, and I was devastated. But I think I'm quite passionate about science and conveying it in a way that people understand and want to get involved with. So I think having a really good pitch helped me really early on. It won my first set of money, and then I've kind of recycled and gone back to it loads of times because it's just got the perfect amount of everything in it. So I think having something or a story that you know and you relate to, and having that and sort of going back to it, and yeah, focus on like how you're selling your business and how people understand and what they connect with. I think that's something I really enjoyed and I found to be quite successful. Yeah.
Such a valuable skill set, being able to frame something that I'm assuming is pretty complex to the audience or to somebody who's not in that area, but being able to frame that and communicate that in a way that everybody understands is something that will serve you well throughout your entire career.
There are so many rules in science that you can't say like something's significant unless it's statistically significant, or you can't say you can do anything until you can do it. So business was like a totally different world where you can say whatever you want basically. And I just thought it was just amazing. You can use much more colorful language and say outrageous things and people believe you. Yeah.
And just opening up a bit of vulnerability, I suppose, is there anything that you don't have to have failed spectacularly, but is there sort of one area that you've had a failure within your business that you know that you won't ever repeat because of something that you've learned from it? And that's to you, Kate, continuing on.
The science is just a series of failures, I guess, until something happens right. I think be careful with money, keep an eye on the bank account, make sure that you're not overspending, underspending, and put a lot more focus into that side of things. I was never particularly good at maths, and accounting has been definitely a sore spot. So it's something that I put more time into now. And don't knock over really expensive bottles of liquid in your own lab. It's terrifying.
That sounds like a story for being back down the pub.
Yes.
What about you, Nicola? Is there an area that you've had a failure in that you've learned from?
Tricky one. Probably there are too many failures that I can name a specific one, but I would say it's always coming down to the fear of getting this negative feedback, as I mentioned before, and which is kind of a failure, because when you don't get the feedback, I mean, you could get it right once, twice, 3 times maybe, but in the end, it will not be a sustainable business, the whole business, a sustainable product. So I think that's what I learned quite quickly, is that you have to embrace that. And I'm not sure if I'm never doing it again, because it's really hard. And but at least now I'm aware of it and having my co-founder, having my team, they also kind of give them the freedom to tell you as well and not be mad at them when they tell you. So I think that's something why I'm quite sure that it'll never happen, or if it happens, I'll spot it quite quickly.
Yeah, I think, we can make these mistakes. It's not really the mistake or the failure. It's how quickly you can rectify that if you continue repeating it.
Exactly.
And you should get quicker and quicker, right? That's the hope. And Deborah, what about you? Is there a spectacular fail in there anywhere?
Well, yeah, I think both of the things that I was just talking about, in terms of our product that we were delivering last year, I probably should have ended delivering it sooner, but I didn't because I was a bit in love with it. And I saw all criticism and data, kind of failing data points as just another challenge. Instead of just going, okay, maybe it's just not working and we need to take what is working and move on to something else. So that's probably one of my, I actually don't know if I've learned that yet. I try and make the people around me and my team aware that I'm now aware that this is something I do, that I will, bloody mindedly go forward with something, which is like a good thing that I have, but it can also be a bad thing. And so I try and make people around me aware that they really do need to forcefully tell me that I might have got in that zone again. Because I'm not sure I've completely got it as something that I would definitely pick up on again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same with my team. I'm the biggest bottleneck in a couple of areas, but I won't let them go. And I stay on it. And it's almost like, I would guess it's like nannying a child through the process for one of my team members, knowing that once again, she's chosen to take this bit herself. And we've got to make sure it actually happens, because the whole thing gets held up if it sits with me. I think I will get there with delegating it, but I think growing a business, growing a team, there's 9 of us now, and you build trust and you get to know people. Also working remotely, you can't work with people like you did in the office. So yeah, it's maybe a longer process, just owning that I'm the bottleneck, really. And we're kind of coming to the end. I can't believe we've just whizzed through an hour this quickly. We're coming to the end. What's the best piece of advice you ever had from somebody else that's stuck in your mind? Let's wrap up with that. I'm going to go first while you have a quick think, but mine would be that 7 out of 10, this may not work for science, Kate, but 7 out of 10 is good enough. It's always good enough. The time it takes to get from 7 out of 10 to 10 out of 10, nobody really notices. Again, maybe don't apply to science or anything in the medical field. But when it comes to running a business, that would be my piece of advice that stuck with me.
Mine would probably be do something you don't want to do first in the morning so that you've achieved something. Or if it takes less than 5 minutes, do it straight away. Because I'm terrible for opening emails and then just forgetting about them. So just reply straight away, or just write that letter, or just do it. Just get on with it.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
I think for me it is getting other people in to do the things they're brilliant at that you're not brilliant at. And don't spend all your energy being a 5 at something and not get to be an 11 at the things you're actually brilliant at. That's
way better. I take mine back.
So don't take it back. The collective will be a great piece of advice.
Tricky one after all yours. I would say kind of equally look after yourself and not just your business, because your business in some way is you. So if you're not functioning, and they're kind of highlighting this weird image that's out there in the entrepreneurial community or in society, that the number of hours, the higher it gets, the higher the productivity is, because that's not true. That's far from true. It might work for some people, and we're all different, but I think really figure out if you're more productive, or if there is more value coming out of your work if you work longer or if it's just, yeah, what society tells you. So yeah, check in with yourself and see if maybe some more breaks, some more short moments for yourself can actually be better.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining me today for the What I Wish I'd Known webinar. And I'm going to hand back over to Siobhan. And I believe I'm a minute early. So if you want to share your the best piece of advice you have ever had from somebody.
Oh God, now you put me on the spot. I honestly can't think of one. I mean, I would say the best piece of advice I have had of somebody is really take time and think about your strengths and your weaknesses, and to design things to help mitigate your weaknesses but play to your strengths.
Brilliant. Thank you. And apologies for putting you on the spot, but it's kind of style.
Well, I've just come on to say thank you very much for hosting today's webinar, Sally, and as well to our fantastic panelists. We had Nicola, Deborah, and Kate all join us and share their thoughts and experiences with us. I know I've taken quite a few lessons away with me, so I hope our audience has as well. I'd like to thank our audience who joined us online today. That's it for the Let's Talk About series for this year. However, I also want to announce that the briefing event for the next Women in Innovation Awards is open for registrations. So if you're thinking about applying, or even if you just want to know a little bit more about it, please go and sign up for that. It's being held on the 24th of August at 10 a.m. till 12:30. We'll be talking through the eligibility criteria and application process, which has changed from last year. So if you did apply last year and you're thinking of reapplying for this year, please do sign up for the briefing event because there has been application changes as well. It's a chance for you to ask questions, seek clarification from Innovate UK. KTN will be announcing what other support that you can get from us during the application process. And we will also be joined by a few special guests on the day. So we hope that you can join us then. If you'd like to keep up to date with all Women in Innovation news and events, please do sign up to our newsletter or visit our program page or join the LinkedIn group. And once again, I'd like to express a massive thank you to Sally for hosting the wonderful session today, our panelists, Kate, Nicola, and Deborah, and to you all for joining us. I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye, everyone.